Last Thursday, Israel's Security Cabinet, instructed the IDF to dismantle the 2 remaining Hamas strongholds in Gaza City and the central camps. Contrary to false claims, this is the best way to end the war and the best way to end it speedily. We will do so by first enabling the civilian population to safely leave the combat areas to designated safe zones. In these safe zones, they'll be given ample food, water, and medical care, as we've done before. And again, contrary to false claims, our policy throughout the war has been to prevent a humanitarian crisis, while Hamas's policy has been to create it. Since the beginning of the war, Israel has let in close to 2 million tons of aid. I know of no other army that has enabled such aid to go to the civilian population in enemy territory. Now, if we had a starvation policy, no one in Gaza would have survived after 2 years of war. But our policy has been the exact opposite. We let in, as I said, almost 2 million tons of aid and sent millions of text messages, millions of phone calls to Gazans to get out of harm's way. Yet in the last few months, Hamas has violently looted the aid trucks meant to get to Palestinian civilians. They deliberately created a shortage of supply. And the UN consistently refused, until recently, to distribute the thousands of trucks that we led into Gaza through the Kerem Shalom crossing. So our problems, we've had tons of uncollected food rotting on the Gazan side of the border because the UN was and still is unwilling to deliver all of it. Here are the tons and tons and tons of humanitarian aid that Israel led in to the Gazan side of the Kerem Shalom crossing, just sitting there because it's not distributed. So now we're going to go around this obstacle. We are going around it by doing 3 things. 1, can I show this, please? Okay. Designating safe corridors for humanitarian aid distribution. No, that's showing the problem, not showing the solution, but here it is. First, designating rather safe corridors for aid distribution. You can drive trucks there and you'll be safe. Second, increasing the number of safe distribution points managed by the Gazan humanitarian foundations. And 3, airdrops. That's airdrops done by the Israeli Air Force, and we're inviting others to join us. The result has been a humanitarian surge, which we're coordinating with President Trump and his team, and hundreds of trucks have gone in recent days. This is preventing hunger, but it's not prevented the global campaign of lies that we have all witnessed. So in Gaza, despite Hamas's obstacles, 2 million people are now getting access to humanitarian aid. But I'll tell you who isn't. The only ones that are being deliberately starved in Gaza are our hostages. This is Evyatar David. Look at his hand, at his arm. He's being deliberately starved by these Hamas monsters. And look at the Hamas captor. Look at the difference. He's eating, and he's eating well. The purpose of this news conference is to puncture the lies and spread the truth, but that distortion has been propelled around the earth, almost the way that the Jewish people were maligned in the Middle Ages. Every massacre of the Jewish people was preceded by massive vilification. We were said to be spreading vermin to Christian societies. We were said to be poisoning the wells. We were said to slaughter Christian children for their blood. And as these lies spread around the globe, they were followed by horrific massacres, pogroms, displacements, finally culminating in the worst massacre of them all, the Holocaust. Today, the Jewish state is being maligned in a similar way. Everything that I told you could be verified easily, but it hasn't. And the international press has bought hook, line, and sinker Hamas statistics, Hamas claims, Hamas forgeries, and Hamas photographs. For example, these 3 children. The first one is Osama al-Raqub. He is in Italy getting treatment because Israel got him out. That's what he looks like today. He has a genetic disease that damages the lungs and digestive system. It makes it hard to absorb nutrients and gain weight. Okay? So Israel facilitated Osama's travel to Italy, where he got the medical aid that transformed his position. The second one is Abdul Qadir al-Fayumi. He suffers from a genetic neurological disorder, spinal muscular atrophy, a degenerative condition that causes muscle wasting, weakness, and severe weight loss unrelated to nutrition. This was the real cause of his frail appearance, not starvation. In fact, he was treated in Israel in 2018. Doesn't help because it's a congenital disease and it defies most treatment at least. The third one is the most celebrated one. This is a New York Times cover photo. It's on the front page of Muhammad Zakaria Ayub and his mother. Muhammad Zakaria Ayub is suffering from a genetic illness, which you're familiar with. It's called cerebral palsy. His mother is well fed, and his brother is healthy. I'm looking right now into the possibility of a governmental suit against the New York Times because this is outrageous. Of course, the correction was postage size. I don't know where it was buried. But this is outrageous. These are the three most celebrated photos, and they're all fake. It's the kind of malignant lies that were leveled at the Jewish people in the Middle Ages. We won't suffer. We won't allow it to go unchallenged, and this is the purpose of this press conference. I hope that you open your eyes to a simple fact. Hamas lies. Now you can ask me any question you want.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Could you give us, please, a timeline when you expect to conclude the new expansion of the new offensive? And if you can give us a few more details about how you're going to provide about this humanitarian surge and how GHF is going to be involved in this. Thank you.
Well, the timeline that we set for the action is fairly quickly. I mean, we want to, first of all, enable safe zones to be established, facilities to be brought to, so the civilian population in Gaza City can move out, as they moved out in Rafah, by the way. You remember in Rafah? There were 1.4 million people. People said they can't, they have nowhere to go and they're not going to move out. It took us, I think, about 8 days or 6 days to move them, and they all moved. There were practically no civilian casualties because they all left. And they went to the Moassi area that I showed you before on the map. We think we can achieve a similar result that safeguards the civilian population, at the same time enables us to go at the last stronghold, the most important stronghold of Hamas, which we haven't done so up to the war. I mean, we've been there, but we haven't taken it as a goal to dismantle the Hamas stronghold there. We do now. I don't want to talk about exact timetables, but we're talking in terms of fairly short timetable, because we want to bring the war to an end. This is how we bring the war to an end. As far as the surge is concerned, we're talking to the U.S. about additional measures, but we haven't waited. Because what we're doing, as I said, is designate safe corridors, allow and expand the GHF distribution points, and we're trying to bring in more resources, hope to recruit some international organizations, maybe, God willing, the UN, if they ever decide to actually do something for the Palestinian people that doesn't go through Hamas. And third, increase the airdrops. The airdrops are important, but they're not the most important thing. The most important thing is ground routes that bring aid, a surge of aid to the Palestinian population as far as we can without letting Hamas loot it.
Second question, yes.
Prime Minister, two questions. Firstly, why is Israel not allowing foreign journalists into Gaza to report independently? And secondly, President Trump has said there is real starvation in Gaza. Do you disagree?
Yeah, on the first question, in fact, we have decided, and I've ordered, directed the military to bring in foreign journalists, more foreign journalists, a lot. There's a problem of assuring security, but I think it can be done in a way that is responsible and careful to preserve your own safety. So the directive has been since, when is it? 2 days ago. from what you're telling me, it hasn't yet been implemented, but it should be, because I think you should see it. And one of the things you're going to see is precisely our efforts to bring in Gazans, to bring in rather food to Gaza. You'll see the trucks that have been entered Gaza and are still waiting to be distributed. You'll see Gazans who are fighting Hamas. You know, we haven't seen it since the beginning of the war. You know, and that's a reflection of the fact that they know that we're approaching the end stage. And these people are, risking their lives and their families, but they say, we can't take it anymore, and they fight back. And the other thing you'll see is physical destruction. And the physical destruction is not because Israel is destroying structures with people in there. That's not what's happening. Israel, in fact, is clearing the population, as in Rafah. But the Hamas terrorists who may stay in those areas booby-trap just about every single building. Not every single building, but a lot of them. And every road, and every street, and every junction, every intersection. So one of the things that we do is we place basically old APC, armored personnel carriers, with tons of explosives, and we detonate them, and they set off all the booby traps. That's why you see the destruction. And we do similar things in the tunnels. The tunnels, these terror tunnels, we put TNT in them, and we detonate that after people have left. But they're under buildings, so the buildings collapse. That's why you see destruction. You see destruction not because we go after civilian populated areas, but in fact areas that have been cleared of civilians and are still rife with terrorists. And that's how we've been able to reduce actually the civilian casualties and increase, of course, the terrorist casualties. I very much appreciate President Trump's support through this entire seven-front war, his magnificent cooperation in the battle to stop the existential threat from Iran, his support throughout, and his support now. He says two things. He says all 20 hostages have to be released, and he says Hamas should not be there. And I think that he, like me, he recognized the fact that there have been deprivations in Gaza caused by Hamas. Hamas has been the cause of that. And what we have to do is overcome it. So we're working together to overcome it.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Is Israel working, proceeding in the belief, in the understanding that it can and will recover all 20 hostages alive militarily? Or is it proceeding in the belief or understanding that conditions of their captivity, Hamas strategy, will make that impossible?
Look, my goal is to get all of the 20 out alive and also all the ones who are not alive. In the beginning of the war, we were told by a very senior commander, he said, look, we have to get used to the idea that we're not going to see even one of them alive. And I disagreed. I said, we'll get most and possibly all of them if we apply judiciously both military pressure and political, diplomatic pressure. So far, out of 255 hostages, we got 205 out, of which 148 are alive. 148 are alive. We have 20 living ones left in Hamas captivity, and 30 who are not alive, as I said before. If we don't do anything, we're not going to get them out. The option of just doing a war of attrition from defensive positions has not proved itself, and I think it will just it won't get them out, but I think it will draw us into a protracted conflict that doesn't bring the war to an end. The move that I'm talking about, I think, has the possibility of getting them out. We're talking about how to, I don't want to go into details, but how to get the remaining hostages alive as we close in on Hamas. And there are various ways that I think, creative ways that this can be done, but again, I won't go into that now.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Two questions, please. You've just shown the horrific photo of Eviatar David, who's kept hostage in Gaza. We know that the hostages' days are numbered. So how will prolonging the war bring them home? And second question, you stated that Gaza would be passed to civilian governance that is not Hamas and not the Palestinian Authority. Can you specifically identify who this civilian governance would be? Do you have any concrete entities or individuals in mind? And is there a timeline for establishing this administration?
Yeah, well, I don't want to prolong the war. I want to end the war. And I think the other suggestions would have prolonged it. We may have gotten maybe a dripping of hostages, even though Hamas showed no willingness to do that. And then they just go on and on and on, and we'd have this endless. Unless you are willing to just say, Israel, capitulate, go out. And even then, I don't think we'll get all the hostages. And if we capitulate, it means that Hamas will rearm, regroup, and carry out all the threats that it openly professes every day, by the way. Every day they say, we're going to do the October 7th massacre again and again, and we're going to destroy the state of Israel. You can't leave them there, So we're not going to do that. So my goal is not to prolong the war. My goal is to end the war. And I think that prolonging the war means that many of them could be starved to death. That's exactly the point. I don't want that. As far as the specific partners for the civil governance of Hamas, we're actually, I think the 5 principles are generally widely accepted. And it's instructive that some of the Arab countries, quite a few of them actually, said that Hamas has to be disarmed. I think this is the starting point. And look at what is happening in Lebanon as a result of our action. The Lebanese government, the new Lebanese government, is talking about disarming Hezbollah. Who would have believed it? Well, some of us did. I did. And that's changing the Middle East, as I promised to do on the second day of the war. I think in this case, if we succeed in this effort to basically end the war by defeating Hamas, its remaining strongholds, there are several candidates. There are several candidates that we're talking about, several constructs. And it's a transitional period. It's a transitional authority. It's going to be there because we don't want to, contrary to what I said, we want a security belt, but right next to our border. But we don't want to stay in Gaza. That's not our purpose. At least not my purpose. And I openly state, including to those who disagree with me. And there are some who do. But I think that our goal is to make sure that Hamas isn't there and that what replaces Hamas does not educate for terrorism, pay for terrorism, launch terrorism, but is willing to live in peace. There are candidates. I don't want to spoil the chances of succeeding here because I think they're real, but they're real providing we finish the job. See, no one's going to go in there if we don't finish the job. We can talk about the day after until eternity. No one's going to go in there unless we finish Hamas, and we're able to finish Hamas. And we will finish Hamas.